Hi everyone, welcome along. We'll allow some folks to join. We've got about 200 people registered for this, including my mum. So, Katie, you didn't think I was going to say that one. No, welcome along. We'll get started momentarily. Allow people to join for a moment. And I'm going to explain a little bit about the scope of the Services Delivery Alliance, what this network is about, and then we'll be getting into our agenda on the anatomy of world-class services. I've got some wonderful guest speakers who I will kick off and introduce now. So starting with you, Katie, would you mind giving us a little bit of an intro to yourself, your background, and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Katie Bonilla. I'm the Global Vice President of Professional Services at Docebo, which is a learning management software. We are built for business and one of the #1 LMSs in the market. I have been with Docebo for 5 years and grown with the company. So I started as a consultant and am now leading our professional services organization. My background is in leadership development and training, and so I love helping people learn, and that is one of the reasons I'm here and part of the SDA. So welcome.
Awesome. And then Rob, who has not been too well, everyone, but is on his deathbed, but is with us. So welcome, sir. Great to see you.
Yeah, always great to be here, Jonathan. Thanks for having me. My name's Rob Niehaus, Senior Vice President of Professional Services for iCIMs, who provides talent acquisition software to the HR community. And prior to joining iCIMs, I worked for a company called Highland Software. And over my career, I've worked in services for over 20 years. And I'm excited to talk to you guys about optimizing your services organization for value and kind of the maturity model that you go through that process. So great to be here today, and apologize for my scratchy voice, and I may clear my throat a few times. I know that's not good webinar practice, but unfortunately, getting over COVID here. So great to be here, though.
Awesome, thank you. And Phil's in as an attendee, so he's going to rejoin as a speaker in a moment. Robbie, if you get him the link, and I'm going to explain a little bit about the Services Delivery Alliance. Oh, here he is, sir. Welcome, welcome. Phil, would you like to introduce yourself and the scope of your role? Oh, you're on mute, sir. Don't worry.
I did find the mute button before I started talking. Microphone set to the wrong thing, so slight extra error. Hello, everybody. Phil Davitt. So I'm SVP of Professional Services Global for Eptura. We're a global workplace tech company, so we are helping people maximize their use of spaces, whether that's offices, whether that's things in those offices, meeting rooms, parking spaces, and things like that, which is obviously incredibly important in the last few years, people making sure that they are maximizing the use of their space. Within professional services, I look after a global team that do delivery, that do post-delivery support, managed service, package delivery, and we are seeing some big increases in the level of professional services that we're positioning. So that's part of what I wanted to talk about today, is how we were able to achieve that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks, guys, for making the time to join. Everyone, I'm Jonathan. I'm the founder of the Services Delivery Alliance, which is a network now actually of more than 150 companies where services leaders ranging from the likes of which we have today, who run services functions, through to directors, senior directors, managers of services functions, who participate in this network. And it's been a wonderful experience for me. The origins of it were we're a software company. We sell a range of software products to our customers, and we sell alongside that a mixture of professional services, both implementation services, consumption-based services sold on a subscription basis, managed services, enterprise support packages. And at the back end of 2022, I was looking at how do companies better productize and package their offerings. I did a Google search and I didn't find anything. So I asked some customers, some friends of mine. Phil, actually, you were on I think one of the first calls where we got folks together and we just started talking about what are some of the shared challenges that services leaders have. And I think once your company reaches a certain size and complexity, you go on this journey in services, and there's this evolution, and therefore, you know, your peers have grappled with the same problems that you have. So now this network meets virtually and in person throughout the world to share experiences on strategy and execution topics. So today we're going to unpack some of those things, and our lovely speakers have kindly prepared some thoughts on their experiences in growing and scaling services organizations. I'm going to begin with a couple of trends. So Mr. Burnell, if you could just take us through here. So there's a few things that, you know, that we experience in our organization and that I see our customers experiencing. One is this consolidation that is quite, I would say, in vogue now in the marketplace. I mean, really, you know, I think customers have been playing kind of that anagram bingo, if you will, for too long, bouncing between kind of SDRs, AEs, PMs, TAMs, and all of the above, across not just you as a vendor, but across many of your peers. One company I spoke to has 350 SaaS subscriptions, and they're a mid-market software business. So there's a lot of consolidation, which means that the role of services is tremendously important, either for navigating that consolidation, proving value to your existing customer base, or indeed maybe taking advantage of it, or maybe you're a company who is indeed consolidating, bringing new products and people into your organization that you then sell, and therefore your GTM is really important. It also means, though, that the complexity is rising for all of us. And therefore, there's a real shift in terms of how companies are trying to simplify the customer experience. Like, you know, essentially everyone wants to acquire customers, onboard them quickly, and deliver fast time to value. However, I think it's become increasingly complex to do that. And so therefore, many organizations are looking at really how can we better architect our post-sale organization to be much more of a growth sale organization. Services also has a key role in helping to win and convert deals, right? There's a lot of, I would say, fatigue around either failed software deployments or implementation fatigue. And therefore, the role of services is critical in customer acquisition. And then finally, third trend is what I see in terms of kind of board pressure, or if you've got multiple board members or multiple investors, no one can agree, and actually you get different opinions on what the role of services should be. But increasingly amongst SDA members, more than 40% see increased board interest in the world of services. And you're kind of in this world of, right, we want you to be ARR enabler, well-run business within a business, but we want you to do all of that with perhaps less people or budget than you did last year. So it's quite an interesting world in which services is operating. As Phil alluded to, and I alluded to for my own business, many organizations are selling a mixture of services. This is something from our own research at Precursive in terms of how we profile some of these offerings, moving from left to right. You've got your traditional PS, which was often your project-based services delivery, perhaps in olden times, as it were, in the world of enterprise on-prem software deployments. You know, people were used to very long implementations where we all lose the will to live, and the emphasis is on services revenue and margin. But that's the rise of SaaS, and what I call the modern SaaS economy means that I would imagine all of us have got the middle piece, right? Which is these more turnkey solutions, rapid deployments of software. Everyone has been building software to be easier to use, and therefore ideally easier to deploy, and the emphasis here on time to value, outcomes, and ARR. And then the rise of subscription services over the last years has been one of the new trends in terms of how do we package services into something that can be sold on a consumption basis, managed services, or on a recurring basis, and how do we maybe get a little bit more control and get paid for our services that we deliver to customers in life that allows us to fund future operations. Final trend, if we move on, is the productization of services that we at Precursive talk a lot about, and is a focus within the SDA, something that packaging that I'm going to hand over to Phil on in a moment. This is some research from Deloitte, which profiles in their study on how enterprise software companies are structuring their services offerings. And the point that I'm really trying to make is you're going to go on a journey with your services offerings, just like your customer goes on a journey with you as a provider. And therefore, thinking about that journey and services offerings on a multi-year basis means that you may sell some things that are kind of land and expand that you do at low or no cost. But over time, you may be able to develop offerings that generate much higher revenues and margins for your organization. And those packages become a product when you can sell them, deploy them, and renew them, in our opinion. Now, with that, I'm going to hand over on the sales front to Bill Davitt to talk a little bit about some of the dynamics in terms of sales alignment and enablement. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Jonathan. So Jonathan mentioned something in there which was around the complexity, that actually one of the things that we're seeing in the marketplace is a lot of complexity in terms of what professional services is being sold. And here at Eptura, we brought together 9 different companies to become one business, Eptura. And one of the things that we noticed was that sudden increase in complexity for the sales teams to position professional services. Now, if I think back to when I first started in professional services, we would view ourselves as the gatekeeper for professional services, almost blocking and tackling with the sales team, sparring quite regularly. I think probably a lot of people still feel in that position. As you go through and kind of as we grew, we aligned a lot more, our leadership organizations coming together kind of to try and deliver one goal, which is obviously company growth, customer satisfaction. And so we started asking that question: how are we going to align professional services between what the PS teams want and PS teams need and what our sales teams need to do? And how are we going to take that very complex set of SKUs and set of products that we've got and simplify it down into things that A, the customers want and provide value, B, the PS teams are happy and able to deliver, but also the sales teams are going to be able to sell. So we had to shift that mindset a little bit to no longer be a blocking function or a gatekeeper function, but being an enabler, not just post the deal being closed, but actually right at the beginning in designing what it is that we go and offer to our customers. So process for doing that is sitting down with, we first of all bring all the PS teams together and figure out what it actually is that we need to do to get customers using the product. So we have a very clear definition of, from starting the onboarding process to using it, but also post-sale and kind of additional upsells, additional requirements that customers have after they've signed up with us. So we bring the PS team together and figure all of those things out, and then start talking to our sales teams back and forth about how they want to kind of position things, what our customers are asking for. And as a group, kind of coming up with some various changes that we're going to look to make. To give an example of that, we one of our heritage businesses had just one line item, one SKU product for professional services, and it was an hour of professional services. Every single thing that was sold was made up of multiples of that one SKU. If you need 5 hours of training, you buy 5 of that. You need an entire deployment across 6 months and 20 members of staff, you just buy a lot of those entities. Some of the others on the other side of it, we had one part of the business that had 320 different types of professional service that could be sold. And of course, we're expecting the sales teams to know exactly what to sell, when to sell it, and likely getting cross with them when they put the wrong thing in accidentally at the wrong time. So the change that we went through from 23 to 24, 23 was the year that we brought all these companies together and started actually kind of operating really as one business. And we only had really kind of various different onboardings. I mentioned the 350 SKUs, and they're all about onboarding, right? During the onboarding process, if you want to have A, you need a SKU for that, B, you need a SKU for that, depending on every different possible combination of onboarding activities. There were SKUs, but they all related just to getting the customer live. Now, we still have that function, but we've simplified those down to be as simple as possible in predefined packages. Salesperson is selling license X. Great, that comes with professional service package X to get the customer live, and then you can add some simple bolt-ons depending on what they want to achieve. So we've simplified for the salesperson to know what package to put in front of customers, making that whole thing much, much slicker. But then also we've added lots of other things that they can position to their clients, whether it's a current customer or a prospect. So we can position buckets of professional service that they can use over the course of a year, multiple years. They can draw down on it to achieve various different goals. You know, we've got previous tasks that used to be given away that the professional services team would get quote unquote roped into doing. Hey, this customer needs this, please do it. We're now actually able to position that as a sale and bring in revenue for it. A lot of people have been asking about certification courses. We've just released ours. It's a very, very slick kind of online learning portal driven testing and certification, but we can actually sell that and sell certifications to both partners and super users. And then the more recent one that's just coming out is premium support packages. Again, this is something that customers have been asking for, our sales teams have been asking for. And so we listened to what they wanted, what customers want to buy and what sales want to sell, and created the packages around it.
Bill, just on that one for a moment. Sorry, Robbie, if you don't mind going back one. So just on that, sometimes there's a little bit of I think reticence or perception that premium support or an ongoing service might be, oh, we don't want to do that because, you know, it's extra money beyond the software license. I think that's somewhat narrow-minded in a way, because oftentimes actually some of those larger organizations really want to know how you're going to support over time. I'm curious to know kind of you mentioned there that it was customer driven, what customers were asking for. Is what I described something that you've seen, that actually it's really bringing that element of security to that relationship in a way?
Yeah, absolutely. Customers will say, I would like to pay for a more advanced level of service. If I pay you money, can I have a ring-fenced team of people that I can work with? You know, if I were to pay an extra fee, could I have a named person that understands my account that could come and provide me these things? Those were conversations that, you know, over years I've had with customers and sales reps saying, customers are looking for this, customers are looking for this extra level of service. Now, other customers aren't looking for that. And so what we don't want to do is increase our generic license price to cover that we're going to supply that service to everybody. We tell them and say, that's fine. That is an advanced and enhanced level of service that you're looking for, which comes with a fee. And yeah, the more upmarket, the more enterprise-led we go, you know, the more people we find are more than happy to kind of cover those additional fees to provide that extra level of support.
Awesome, thank you. We'll come back to some questions at the end of your section. Great.
Rob, it might be worth just pulling up the whole slide. I know it probably builds, but and the reason for that is those various different things that I've talked about fall into these three different models, which also is what Jonathan was getting at when he kind of had the traditional model, the more high velocity, but also subscription services. And so we've got those a la carte pre-packaged options. Somebody can turn around and say, I just want to buy a group of hours to achieve a certain goal, as long as we define it. But you can also buy a package. That means for the sales team, it's nice and quick. They want to sell something. They know what they're selling. They know the price. They know the process. The statement of works are automated off the back of what they're picking in terms of the different options. Much quicker than having to custom build something each time. There's also service points, which is those prepaid buckets. Somebody is buying 50 hours, 50 days, whatever it might be, a certain amount of time over the year that they're going to look for help, but they might not want it on a monthly basis. There might be peaks and troughs throughout the year. And so they're essentially buying a drawdown bucket. It is use it or lose it. There is a note there at the bottom, what happens when they lose it. Really important that the business is built to track that and to kind of proactively be reaching out to them and saying, hey, we're 6 months through and maybe we haven't used as much as we would have expected. So what about we do this? What about we do that? And provide some proactive options to those customers for what they could do with their time. Because of course, at the end of that year, we want them to buy that bucket again. And then that last in the list, the subscription service, that's where you are shifting from one-time PS revenue to recurring revenue. There are lots of ifs and buts around how that revenue is treated. So that is probably a whole other session. But you're looking at that comes in, you buy a 3-year contract, you pay up front for year 1, you get it on your renewal for year 2, year 3, it appears in your renewal when you come up to expand out your contract. And ideally, you want to link that to the account size so that as they then buy more licenses, they're actually also increasing their support services, whether it's through PS or a premium support, so that you keep getting that uplift each time they increase or take out more products as well.
Great. Well, we've got some questions from the audience, so I'll just pitch these to you now. So Greg asks, curious on how you align the rest of the SaaS business on value first milestones. My experience doing that results in much different answers between product sales, marketing, services, and CS.
So yes, we obviously you do get various different views of what is the most important thing for the business. I think that comes down from senior leadership actually bringing together whether it's C-suite or the next layer down, but essentially your executive layer of the business needs to be pulling in the same direction. There will then be operational decisions that need to be made on product direction, giving certain discounts on certain deals, giving free PS on certain deals that different parts of the business will have different views on. The trick that we found, we do have this, is various different, I guess, committees, depending on the name you'd want to call for them, that are the decision-making factors there, built up of the leaders in the different parts of that business. So if a sales rep wants to come and sell something that's off book, but hey, they really think there's a huge amount of value for it, product might be behind it, PS might not be, we would get that committee together to make a decision on it.
I got a couple of comments on that as well. So one is, it depends on if you're black and white value or you're gray. And what I mean by that is, if you sell a solution where at go live, you immediately make your client secure, for example, or more risk-free, let's say as an example, or you've got a payment gateway where payments immediately start, that could arguably be value. If it's grayer than that, then the first people you need to ask is the customer. And so it should be in the business case, ideally on what they describe as value. If you're looking to do it at scale, run a survey, ask a one line question, which is how would you describe the value of your solution to your customers? And you could start to begin to kind of coalesce around what that value moment really should be. Because otherwise, as you say, you're going to get very, very different opinions. Anyone else?
You're touching on the trick of defining value in time to value, TTV, of when you define the customer has reached that. So if that's what the question was about, then yeah, it is incredibly tricky if you have that gray value area. We're currently picking that up with the newly released survey that kind of asks the customer about the value that they're getting. And so we're able to actually monitor that post delivery as well.
Awesome. Right. Let's jump into Katie's section now, Robbie, and we'll come back to some more questions at the
Great.
end. Awesome. So moving on to the theme of intelligent services, I asked Katie to prepare some reflections on, as you've grown and scaled your services organization, reflecting on some of the experience therein. And in particular, this idea of the importance of being able to run an intelligent services business. So over to you, Katie.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much. We can go to the next slide, but I'm going to talk through, as I mentioned, in my 5 years at Docebo, I've grown quite a bit. I joined the company as a consultant, and I'm now leading the entire team. That speaks to the growth that we've experienced as a business in the last 5 years. So when I joined, we were in startup mode, and we're now more towards a level 3 of maturity in our PS org. So I wanted to share kind of what you need to be thinking about at any given stage in your growth. And share some of those reflections. So Docebo right now, when we look at our team and kind of what we're comprised of, about 65% of our delivery is what we call functional services. So we are an LMS platform. The majority of what we're offering is consultation on how to use that software. About 35% of what we're doing is what we call technical services. And so that can be blended in with our onboarding, where there are more technical components to setting up integrations, et cetera. But we also offer other products and features that are more technical in nature by default, right? So these scales are tipping a little bit as things become more technical, more businesses. Again, we talked about complexity, right? So the technical services is climbing, but that's where we're at today. And then part of our team is dedicated to service excellence. So we kind of look at our project management team and service excellence lead role to really drive excellence within the organization. And then this past year, we actually had our solution architects join our side. They serve both pre and post sale and are very technical, helping with scoping and vetting requirements and solutioning. So it made a lot of sense for them to work very closely with my team, and it helped build a relationship with our sales org. So that's where we are today, but this has varied, right? Every year that the makeup of our team has looked very different based on demands. And I really wanted to get to a place where we were a little bit more steady and we didn't have to keep moving people around from manager to manager and title to title. And so what I suggest you think about from my learnings and my successes is be playing chess, not checkers, right? You really do need to think about scaling as soon as possible and think about where you think your business is going, the types of demands that are going to come, and try and predict that as much as possible and be thinking about the different ways you might scale, because you can scale geographically, you can scale into different markets, different industries, different segments. So you have to keep an eye on your business and be close with your sales team to kind of understand what that might look like for your business. But you need to be thinking not just about where you are today, but where you're going as you think about your org design and your hiring strategy. You really want to think about being agile, right? And so if you are in a hyper growth or very growing actively, you really want to be able to bring people on and have folks that are agile and they can kind of flex in any direction, right? You don't want to hire resources that are very rigid or very specialized, especially when you're growing and still evolving, because you want folks that will be able to leverage their skill sets in different capacities. So being able to hire someone who's functional with a technical lean so that they can maybe develop into a technical role, right? Something like that. And then your people. People are the greatest asset we have, right? And we need them. And so focusing on their development and career pathing, again, when you hire folks that have that sort of personality and the cultural alignment, that they're willing to grow with you, they want to be agile, they want to learn, they want to do different things, they want to help you scale, creating pathways for that and skills development so that whatever they're interested in, whatever they're good at, you can create those opportunities for them as you're growing and learning. You can place those people in different roles or leverage them in different ways. It also obviously helps with retention, but really focusing on the people and thinking about that again when you're hiring, right? Hiring not just a dynamic skill set across the team, but just dynamic people in general. I think we can move to the next slide. I'm a very visual person and I'm always looking for an example of everything. And so when I was mapping out our org chart, I wanted to see someone else's org chart. So this is mine currently. And this is how we've broken out our team. So most of our business is in North America, but we've got a pretty good size market in EMEA and a smaller one in APAC. So I have a service excellence manager who leads a service excellence lead role, and then our project management team. And that function oversees customer project delivery, right? So our project managers are project managing with customers on projects. They might be supporting some internal projects as well, and they help oversee all of our partner delivered projects. So they're really helping with oversight of our outsourced and partner delivered work. And then the service excellence lead role, that's a single position. And this is someone who's really helping us with process development, knowledge management, really focused on creating efficiencies for the team and has full ownership of all of that, which has been super helpful. Then I have two functional directors. So they have their own management team and then functional consultants within them. You'll see a few project managers do sit under that role in our EMEA region because it just makes a little bit more sense. But this is the breadth of our team. This is where most of our resources lie. And again, they're delivering our onboardings. They're helping us evolve our offerings. They're offering hours, and we're working on subscription services. So we've really aligned the teams around the skill set, and that way we can deploy those resources against anything that qualifies as a more functional service, even when we create new services, right? So instead of having just an onboarding team and siloing those resources against a single service, we now have these teams that are based on their skill sets, and we can leverage them in many different ways. Same thing with our technical services team right now. Still a little bit smaller, but that's growing in time. So that is our technical account managers, which is an example of a subscription service that we have. And then our technical consultants, again, they're working on some of our onboardings. They're doing our technical deployments and working on some core technical projects. They're supporting and kind of jumping in as needed. And so again, they're super dynamic. And when those technical speed bumps come in and come up, we can allocate them very quickly, but they also have their own portfolio that they're managing. So super critical. And then our solution architects, which are kind of woven into both the pre and post sale to kind of support our team. As I mentioned, this has looked very different. We did have an onboarding team and then sort of an additional value-added services team. That didn't really work very well. We tried to do just regional. Everybody in North America is on one team and everybody in EMEA is in one team, right? And, as you grow, you have to kind of look at the numbers you have, the leaders you have, and work with what you have. But I have found that this model, it really allows us to move in any direction, respond to pretty much any demand that we need. It's also created a lot of clarity internally, right? It's very clear what each team owns, what they do. And so if there's an escalation or a need, folks can get to the right leader very quickly. So it's really helped. And then it also really allowed us to create those development paths. And kind of say, like, if you're going to stay on that functional track, here's what it looks like. If you want to move from functional to technical, here's what that looks like. So it made all of that much more clear.
On that, you can bring up the slide, Robbie, but just on that, Katie, I mean, you have a very strong background in L&D. I think one of the things that people can struggle with in services is that career pathing and offering career path opportunities and development opportunities. As you kind of reflect on that org structure, that diversification, is that being one of the benefits that was maybe expected or perhaps underappreciated by sort of diversifying and having more areas of specialism? You opened up things to improve retention and over time of staff?
Yeah, absolutely. When you have, I think PS in general really allows you to be incredibly innovative and try new things because you're responding to your customers' needs to get them to success, right? So you are always going to have those packaged services, but you're also there to get them to value, and that looks different for every customer. And so what we saw in time is we could kind of find where people had interest, where they would sort of proactively start a little project or kind of work on something extra for their customer. And then we'd see if that same thing was coming up more frequently. And because we already have someone who's shown interest in it, then we give them ownership and say, help us develop an offering or a job aid or a customer resource for that thing. And then it can continue to iterate into a whole package when needed. So absolutely, diversifying kind of was an organic thing from us responding to customer needs and trying to proactively identify those. And so it's helped us expand our portfolio, but it also allows us to kind of informally just continue to try new things and innovate. And people, I encourage anybody on my team to try anything they want. If they raise their hand for a project that is outside of their lane, I'm like, all right, well, you're going to have to drive in 2 lanes now because you got to do your day job. But if you want to try that, absolutely, let's go.
Cool. So here in some of the takeaways, what were, as you look back, what would have been perhaps some of the roles that you would have hired for sooner?
Yeah, a resource manager for sure. So we actually didn't get a PSA tool until about 2 years ago. So there was a good while there where our whole business ran in a spreadsheet that we called the Wild West because that's how it felt. And so once we got the PSA tool, we didn't hire a resource manager either. We were like, oh, we'll figure it out. And our management team was all in there doing everything, which you can imagine, right? Really well-intentioned, but I think a resource manager was critical. We decreased the time it took us to assign projects by over 50%. just by adding a single point of contact to actually like allocate those resources and do intake for our projects, right? So it took a lift off my management team and freed up a lot of time for strategizing and oversight. And it helped us, again, drive time to value. We're able to put people on projects 50% faster.
Yeah.
Resource manager, absolutely. Service excellence lead was a little bit of a harder sell and kind of a slower transition, but that is another one where I think you really do need to think about administrative roles in some capacity outside of an RM. You need someone helping you with processes, and so if you don't have a centralized ops team that you can leverage and lean on in your business, you really need to think about who's going to own that on your team, because as you're growing and as you're scaling, you will need standardization, you will need processes, and somebody's got to own that, because eventually it becomes a beast that you can't control.
Cool. And then just finally on the left-hand side there, tell folks that, you know, you and I talked about this, where it's like how you rather than asking for permission, you manufacture the role yourself. So help others understand this tactic.
Yeah, sure. So I kind of talked about like leveraging people and having these dynamic resources and playing chess, not checkers, right? You're thinking about that RM, you're thinking about that service excellence lead, you're thinking about, I'm going to need leaders, or we might go in this direction. So you can start to develop your people into that. And when you identify a need, instead of, you know, necessarily pushing for, I need a whole headcount, I need a whole nother person. Sometimes it's hard to prove the value of that resource until you can actually show the value. And so what I've been able to do is we'll kind of decrease someone's utilization, right? So I'll use our service excellence lead as an example. She was delivering our services. We kind of still had a smaller portfolio for her, but because she was very interested and very good at process development, knowledge management, super type A, and like all about it, we said, hey, we're going to stick you on our G drive. Can you get it organized and get us a naming convention? And once she did that, we were able to showcase how much faster our team could work when they could find the right resources. So it was kind of an incremental improvement, but that gave me a business case to say, here's what we plan to do with this role. I would like to move her into this role. We're going to rename her. And so we did remove somebody from our front line, but it created efficiency so that we did not have to replace her. And so that's a good way to get around it.
Thanks. And then on the process side of things, then what have been the learnings?
Yeah, I think, again, when you think about hiring, like if you can't hire that administrative role, you do need to think about standardizing as soon as you can. And this is not to say that you can't continue to iterate. And I think that's what do they say? Like perfection is the enemy of progress, right? Think about what is working and try to package that up and standardize it as soon as you can. So I saw a question about like, when do you know that you should kind of formalize something? Like, when do you know? You know when it's working, when you keep doing it over and over again, and you say, this is how we do that thing, even if it's just the first part of your onboarding, standardize that, document it, and make sure everybody knows. And then you can continue to find what works and continue to iterate and make things better. But standardization and packaging helps the sales cycle. It helps your team deliver. It creates efficiencies. And if you can do that sooner rather than later and then build on that, you're really going to move faster as an organization.
Awesome. Any other points you want to make here around?
I think from the technology side, like I'll just hit on the AI component, honestly, because I think that's just a really hot topic. You know, you need tech. PSA, obviously, like super important. And AI is like the next big thing that we're all trying to figure out how to leverage. And again, I think like iterating and kind of figuring out where you can get some quick wins and incremental gains. You know, we're looking at AI tools that will like scrub through projects and do RAID logs and risk analysis for us much quicker. And we're using things like the Gong readouts that we all see and the Zoom readouts to help us with our recap. So that's kind of where we're starting. But you also need to align your AI strategy to the broader business strategy, right? What is your company doing in AI and what are they going to adopt? But regardless of AI or whatever programs you're taking advantage of, again, that sort of administrative burden that you really do need to think about is governance and process, right? How are we going to use these tools? What are the standards around the use? Governance in a PSA, for example, is very important. So again, I think you have to consider the roles that you have in your org when you're considering the type of tech stack you have.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think with any tools, you move from like what is happening to why it's happening. So if you have data, like we look at our own productivity and we look at variance in our services organization, and if there was variance for us, for example, it's like, okay, well, why is that there? And you've really got to start unpicking it. So when you get more data, you have to build these different organizational muscles, because you've got to kind of do stuff about it and potentially quite quickly.
Absolutely.
Lovely, great section. I know we've got some questions. We will come back to them. Wonderful stuff, Katie. Thank you ever so much. We'll move on to Rob's section, and then we will get into a quick fireside chat without the fire, because I've got a wooden desk. Over to you, Rob.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks, Jonathan. So great content so far, and I'm here to talk to you guys today about how to optimize for value as you scale and grow your professional services business. I always like to say services has one of the most important jobs within a software organization, which is driving customers and leading them to value. If that doesn't happen after they make that purchase, you can forget about renewals, you can forget about, expand opportunities, et cetera. So building a services organization to deliver value is very important. From a growth phase perspective, I like to think services goes through three main phases of growth as it matures within a software business. I think there is a reality that we are a professional services organization within the context of a SaaS organization. With that, there's some phases that come from a maturity perspective as we grow. That first phase really is services as a necessity. So you build a software company, and then all of a sudden you need a services organization to deliver and enable the product. And it almost feels like sometimes no one really cares about services, right? Just go make the customer happy, give away the work for free. Software revenue growth is the only thing that we care about as a company, and just go configure the product, right? As long as we do that, we'll be in good shape. Well, at some point, you want to start changing your business where services becomes a differentiator, because someone in your organization says, wait a minute, we do really care about services. We need services to be a differentiator in our go-to-market strategy if we're going to compete against our competition on more than just software features and functions. So all of a sudden, someone starts to care about, right, the success of the services organization and how can it be a differentiator, because customers want more than a tech expert. They want confidence that when they make a giant purchase with you, that's spending at times millions of dollars year over year in recurring subscription fees, that they're actually going to get the outcome and the value that they're looking to achieve. And then at some point, while you can run professional services and give away a lot of stuff for free and just chalk it up as a loss leader, at some point in time, your finance and accounting teams are going to come to you and say, why are we losing money in services? We got to generate money in services, and we need to run and grow in a healthy, profitable way. The last section is all of a sudden services can really become a growth engine within that software organization, where services really is perceived at being such a huge catalyst that it's not just a differentiator, it's actually helping the business grow and scale in a continuous model. That comes through driving lead generation and helping to make margin. It comes through delivering quality services to help reduce churn. And ultimately, customers, right, want to pay for more value, like what Phil was saying in his presentation. They're happy to pay for more value. Well, let's monetize that value, and suddenly services can become a growth engine within that software business, where your customers are looking at it as something that helps you continuously realize value. Your sales team sees it as a way for them to help sell and achieve their quota, and your finance team really sees it as a way to help grow the business in a healthy financial way. So what I want to talk about right now are some of the lessons learned or things that I see in each phase that are critical if you're going to go through this maturity model as an organization. So first, services as a necessity, right? You want to start with the basics. You want to make sure you got good quoting practices. Make sure that you can, help, streamline the sales quoting process and have visibility to the quotes that are going out the door, and get some controls around how you're quoting your services to deliver value to your customers. You want to make sure you're managing project budgets, because in the next phase, you are going to have to start packaging some of those solutions. And to Phil's point, you definitely want to deliver the value to your customer, but you also want to do that in a healthy, profitable way. Excuse me. So you need to understand what your costs are of delivering these services to your customer, so you can come up with some good bundles at a later time. Key thing, if you want to get investment to help scale and grow, so you can continuously deliver more value, is you want to track your discounting and your free of charge work very early and often. If you got good quoting practices and you can see where some of that work's going, you can see what your actual level of effort is to deliver, and you can control some of your discounting, that'll help you start running a more financially healthy business. I think in this phase too, there's always a lot of investment from a free of charge perspective, and tracking your free of charge work where services is being asked to deliver work for free for whatever reason was decided as an organization is important, because if you're going to get funding to add new roles, like Katie was saying, you need to be able to, scale in a healthy way from a growth perspective and be able to articulate where you're doing things that aren't showing up on the P&L, but are still contributing to the success of the organization. Obviously, start with methodology and focus on velocity and customer quality through that motion, and start thinking about how should we measure value from what our customers are purchasing from us. If we had to come up with 5 KPIs that we wanted to measure at 60 days post live, what are those KPIs? And are we delivering in our methodology the reporting that we need to be able to measure those KPIs downstream? And you definitely want to start with a PSA tool, because that gives you the visibility to a lot of this stuff. In the next phase, services as a differentiator, this is really where you start pivoting, and services is really seen by your business as something that needs to be at the forefront of why a customer should purchase with you, right? It's way more than just product and features. It's a partnership and it's value delivery. And a lot of that comes through services. So services 100% needs to become a differentiator within your business. And as you're in this phase of your maturity model, because you've done all the things on the left, now you start assessing, right? Where do we need some of those new roles? From Katie's perspective, right? Resource management is critical to scaling and growing your business. Solution architecture is critical to your customers as you continue to sell up market, so that you have someone that can architect an end-to-end solution across your whole product stack that will deliver the outcomes and the value to your customer. I think it's important to market your successes too. A lot of organizations start as software and SaaS companies, and they focus on that, market the heck out of that, as we all should. That said, we should be marketing the successes of our services organization and the value that we're bringing to our customers and the experiences that they're having. In this phase, you are focusing on the value. As I mentioned, you're starting to measure those KPIs. When customers ask you, what should I measure as value? You can lead with not just the KPIs, but what good looks like at other customers, because you've been tracking that and you thought about that in that early phase of how are we going to track and measure value for the customer when we're finished. This is the stage where you start really building those new offerings that Phil was talking about. And this is also the phase where you start looking into alternative delivery models. This is where you start scaling through partners. This is where you start scaling through offshore models. And if you've done the things on the left and you've started packaging up your offerings, it's much easier to scale through alternative delivery models and deliver value through those channels, because you've put good packages and processes in place and started measuring all of this very early on in your approach. And then obviously here you start driving and measuring really healthy project margin. In the last phase, from a services as a growth engine, right? This is where everybody's looking at services not just as something that has to be there to make our customers, consume the product, but it's actually seen as an engine that's generating recurring revenue for your business, because you've turned a lot of these offerings into recurring models. You're leveraging your global workforce and driving a healthy margin behind it. You've matured your service offer management practice, which is really all the things Phil's been talking about, where you're constantly listening to customers, finding ways to deliver more value to them, and packaging those experiences up to them to ultimately give them an experience, not just at the onboard phase, but throughout their entire customer journey with you. You should have amazing references by right now. I always like to say one of the most important things services can give to sales is a referenceable account. It's like the most important thing.
During implementation.
What's that, Jonathan?
During implementation, even better.
Exactly, even better. The earlier the better, right? Yeah. So it's a huge thing. And if you're doing the things on the left, you're going to have satisfied, happy customers, because they're realizing value from all the things you've delivered to them. And really, services can be a value consumption gap to that customer, right? Technology is constantly changing. Customers' ability to consume and understand how to leverage it, right, continues to expand, because they can't keep up with it all. It's hard enough for us to keep up with it all as a services delivery team within the software company. So services can really build a lot of these packaged offerings to continuously deliver value to the customer. And I always like to say customer success is definitely there to engineer the customer to the value and protect that value, but services can be the medicine that customer success prescribes. So takeaways from this, why value wins. You gotta think about the success of your customer and how you're actually going to drive to their value. And I know time to value was something that was getting discussed earlier. I think value can be a challenging thing to measure, and sometimes customers don't even know how to measure it. But if you can lead them with key KPIs and lead them with the data that we have, as we're SaaS companies, helping them understand how to measure the value from their investment and trying to speed that up in a relentless fashion in services is critical. Because eventually you're going to, if you're delivering that value, it's going to lead to retention, growth, and PS revenue. And you're going to be seen as an ARR driver within the software business, which is what boardrooms really want to see. At the same time, know that Rome wasn't built in a day. Okay, this maturity model can take a long time to go through, and it doesn't happen overnight. So you definitely want to choreograph the change. And Jonathan posted a really nice services maturity model, that you can have access to, that he posted on his LinkedIn account, that I think is a great maturity model to work through. But I kind of see it in those three phases. It's services a necessity, turn it into a differentiator, and then that giant growth engine. But as you scale, and I think, Phil, you maybe mentioned something earlier, it is really important to stay aligned with your company strategy. Because if you go to scale your services organization too quickly, right, and it's not in alignment with corporate strategy of being a SaaS company, right, you could almost get too far out to the right on your maturity model. And somebody may ask you, why are we trying to drive services up to, this amount of revenue, right, within the business? Because there is a margin profile that comes with that. The margin profile needs to be healthy, right? And the growth needs to be healthy. And you don't want to get too far out to the right and get ahead of your corporate strategy. And then the last thing, right? Build your financial discipline early, because you're not going to be able to scale and grow if you're not identifying, understanding how you're going to do that in a healthy, profitable way. Because if you're going to add new roles, bring people in to package in your service offerings, right? Bring in resource management, build solution architecture, right? You got to have ways to fund that and show the funding as you go, so that you can continue to scale in a healthy and growth in a healthy and positive way. And being in a private equity backed organizations, my entire professional services career, things can change beneath your feet pretty quickly. So you want to be prepared for when that moment comes. So thanks for the time, Jonathan, and that's my piece.
Oh, awesome. Have a drink, buddy. Because that was good. It's got a scratchy throat. No, really good, really good. I do the point you raise about the sands shifting beneath your feet and being aligned with the corporate strategy. I was talking to a wonderful services leader who runs services for a public software company now, about 300 people, talking to his boss, who was concerned about services gross margin, and that's the CFO, prepping for a meeting with the CEO. So it's prepping all around kind of cost and efficiency and all of these types of things. And first question from the CEO was, why aren't we investing more? So you can often have kind of like different views, because the view of the CEO in this particular organization, understanding the value that services was driving, was like, we don't mind losing money at the moment. Let's grow the business because we drive ARR growth. So lovely points, well raised. Lots of questions coming through. So let's endeavor to get to them. This is a great one from Greg. Hey, Greg, hope you're still on. Anyone have a magic playbook when you join a SaaS business with a sales team of 300 plus and they've previously given everything away? Any advice on how to approach that? Or run and don't take that job? Smiley face. Here we go. Let's go. Katie, what do you think?
My first instinct is to run, but yeah, I think this is a good opportunity to build relationships, right, and show the value of services. So I think like the real answer is like get leadership alignment. You need to befriend and partner with your sales leaders first, and you need to build that trust. I had to do that when I first stepped into a leadership role at Docebo. Like the sparring that Phil was talking about at the beginning, like it was all day, every day. It was just like a battle. And so I really had to just kind of like put my tail between my legs and say, I'm here to serve you, right? And I kind of led that and said, I'm here to make your deals easier to sell. And then they started to see some of the ways that I could add value and that services could help customers. And so we had to really focus on building trust. And it took a while, right? So I do think it's an investment, but it's a worthwhile one if you can kind of turn that around in your business. That's a huge milestone as a leader, if you can get to a good spot there.
If you're being interviewed by the CFO or the CEO, Greg, ask for them and they like you and they want you, get the VP sales or the CRO involved in the interview process and get them on the line talking about it before you take the job, right? Because if you're in the interview process, they're like, we're bringing you in to do this and do this and do this. That will certainly ease the arrival. If you've also got the support of the board on what services should be doing in terms of charging, for example, or monetizing services, then that's going to be very helpful. And then you got to go down and up in the organization. So if you do get that alignment at the executive level, you're going to have to win hearts and minds from the frontline teams, right? So there, look at the performance bell curve, who's on President's Club. Those are the people that you need to go and win the hearts and minds of, right? Likely they're probably better at positioning services already. If you can win them over, the middle of the bell curve pays attention to what the top boys and girls are doing. So those are a couple of tactical tips. Run. Very good. Shane, keen to understand how you changed the customer mindset to pay for the ad hoc tech services. So this is going to Phil, as customers sometimes expect this for free as a part of ARR or are used to it. Phil.
It's a good question because I got asked this question by one of our sales leaders earlier today. I've double checked, she's not on the call. But yeah, she asked me this question and she brought a particular customer example. And she said, customer X has said they don't expect to pay for it. She said, so I don't think we can charge for this. And I said, look, I fully understand that. And when we look at what we're trying to charge for, I kind of almost try and look what's in front of the curtain, behind the curtain, or in front of the firewall, behind the firewall. What can customers do for themselves on the platform versus stuff that we have to do for them? If it's something they can do themselves, then it's, you know, teach someone to fish. We're going to show them how to do it, but we expect them to do it themselves. If they want us to do it for them, no problem. We're going to charge you for it. If it's behind the curtain, behind the firewall, it's a bit trickier because we're essentially saying, you have to get this work done. We have to do it for you, and we want to charge you for it. Reality is, I was able to show 30 deals in the past 2 months where we've done it, and the customer hasn't blinked. They haven't blinked at the fact that we're charging them. They haven't blinked at the price for doing it. They've just messaged us and said, hey, I want you to do this. And we've said, yep, sure, no problem. Here's a quote for it. They've signed it off and we've done it. Everybody's happy. And so, as I said to the sales team earlier today, should we make it free for 31 people because one person doesn't want to pay for it? Or should we charge those 30 customers that are more than happy to pay for it and deal with that one as the exception that it is?
Thank you, thank you. And then last one, Tom Baker. Hey, Tom. Did you end up moving things like user training, which might have been monetized before, into free self-service offerings, and if so, how did that go?
So no, from our side, we didn't do that. Wondering if this is the Tom Baker that I've worked with before. If so, hey Tom. But yeah, realistically, we didn't move that stuff over. So we had stuff that we were charging for in various different SKUs. Training is a great example because we would have, you know, training module 1 would be, you know, $5,000. Training module 2, different SKU, $5,000. Training module 3, different SKU, $5,000. No difference except in the title. And when we drill down into, great, what do we do with that data? What do we do with the fact that we can report this differently? The answer was nothing, nothing whatsoever. We just maintain 3 times as many SKUs as we need. We don't do anything with it. So what we did is we simplified the SKUs and the available products, but we didn't move any of that stuff into free services or self-service. Now, we are looking at enhanced kind of knowledge centers and customer communities where customers can go on and get self-service data. Absolutely great. Falls back into that teach someone to fish category. We want people going there and learning things themselves. But if somebody wants to come to us and they want to have training, then yeah, there's going to be a fee for that.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. And then last one to Rob from Camille. What key cooperation points would you raise when it comes to structuring a consulting organization next to customer success?
Yeah, so I think it's important to get aligned on a few things. So one, I talked a lot about how you measure value, right? I think, how is your customer success organization and your services organization working together to make sure that the value protection that the customer was looking to achieve stays consistent, right? From that onboarding experience and through service delivery into, the overall view of health of a customer score. And how do you enable your customer success team to know the value that the customer is looking to achieve and give them access to do that? But I think, you got to align on what those KPIs are that success wants to leverage downstream to continuously measure and improve upon with that customer. And I think a big thing is the offer management element, which is, customer success is hearing a lot about what customers want, where they feel like they could get more value from you as an organization. And if you've got a good partnership between customer success, services, and really support to say, what are the offerings that we need to bring to market to improve our customers' experience and continuously deliver value to them? That connection between success, services, and support is critical, right, to continuing to bring new offerings to market to continue to advance the value journey with the customer.
Awesome. Brilliant. Thank you, everyone, to our wonderful speakers. So virtual round of applause from everyone. Really great insights. Thank you ever so much. If you want to join the SDA, head over to servicesdeliveryalliance.com. Reach out to Phil, Katie, and Rob on LinkedIn. They can tell you a little bit about it. It is what it says on the tin. You can reach out to me with any questions. Thank you ever so much for everyone taking the time and input. Rob, hope you feel better. Katie, great to see you. Everyone have a good day or evening wherever you are in the world.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Robbie. Thanks, Phil.